Vincent Macquet is General Manager of the Sofitel Fiji Resort and Spa. Vincent, welcome, or should I say bonjour?
Bonjour and Bula.
Bulla! I have been practicing that for a long time.
I think you
Bulla?
should go. I think you should go with Bula.
What about Bulla Vanaka?
No, and I will respond to you, Mike. Bula Vinaka.
You know, Fiji is such a beautiful place, happiest place in the world. Tourism, and a very, very important part of Fiji. How is Fiji faring at the moment?
Well, Mike, the pandemic COVID-19 has and continue to have a devastating effect on the island nation of Fiji. Essentially, since March this year, the borders of the world were shut down. The hotel industry, which accounts for 43% of the GDP of this country, has come to a standstill. And also, to add to that, directly or indirectly, 18% of the population is associated to the industry itself. So I would say that we are doing it the tough way at this point in time. And we've no real changes for the foreseeable future.
So, what about the just the locals who have such a small wage anyway? How do they get by with COVID-19 being so ugly?
Fiji is a very resilient nation. As an emerging country, a developing country, Fijians are very resilient. And since the start of the pandemic, one thing that is quite amazing across the entire country, main island of Fiji at least, is that Fijians went back to what they know, which is working the land and fishing. So very much on a subsistence approach, whilst the economy itself is a bit at a standstill. So things are working, and the community spirit within Fiji is something that has always been there and has always been very strong. So throughout the villages that you drive across the island, you can stop and you will still have those smiles across their faces, and one is helping the other, essentially.
They talk about a travel bubble between nations. Is there a travel bubble at the moment with Fiji? I mean, you see flights to Hong Kong still, to China, not that many because of COVID, of course, but there are some flights. Are there any flights at all into Fiji?
I said the flights stopped in March this year, with a few repatriation flights early April. But since then, there's been really two levels of flights coming into Fiji. Fiji Airways, our national carrier, are doing currently weekly cargo flights to Australia, New Zealand, and the US, but they are not allowed to carry passengers by law. And there's one flight currently serviced by Air New Zealand every Thursday for citizens, residents, and working permit holders to come back to Fiji. But when it comes to tourism itself, at this point in time, we are very much at ground zero.
When do you see flights resuming? I know before we mentioned how long is a piece of string, but do you have any idea when flights could start resuming flying to Fiji?
Look, the most optimistic approach for us at this point in time would be towards the later part of the year, that is late November, early December, and that's very optimistic. And if that was the case, we can only see a select few destinations being involved in that bubble. Primarily, I would say other island nations of the Pacific, being Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu. As Fiji, they are COVID contained. And we would like to think that New Zealand will join us in that bubble sooner than later. There has been talks between governments taking place, but yet again, very much at the early stage of those discussions. But if New Zealand was to come back and enjoy the facilities and our great beaches here towards the end of the year, that will be a blessing for us. Let's not forget, Mike, that New Zealand is currently our second biggest destination in terms of visitors arrivals for Fiji currently.
What are other strong markets for Fiji?
So Australia is our number one market and will very much remain so, hopefully in the future when things will settle back in Australia. Followed by New Zealand as a second market, third market being the US, and our fourth market being Asia, primarily from China, and the fifth one being the island nations of the Pacific. So if you look really at where we're sitting right now, the USA is very much not on the cards for the remainder of this year and potentially up till mid next year. Australia, with the second wave currently taking place, has pretty much put that bubble in jeopardy in terms of having Australia joining New Zealand and coming to their favorite destination being Fiji. China, obviously, we don't have direct flights from China. So flights coming from China normally have a stopover either in Hong Kong or Singapore, and with those routes being closed as well. So it doesn't give Fiji a lot of alternatives currently. So we are very much hoping, I repeat myself, but very much hoping that the Pacific Islands will reopen and shortly followed by New Zealand.
It's a terrible time for the whole world, but we have no choice. We just have to get through it. Now, this has been a bit of a blessing because you have all the time in the world to renovate. And we're not talking about a house here, we're talking about a magnificent property. Vincent, could you fill us in on the renovations at your really big house?
Yes, well, we started the renovations early 2019. That was a complete rejuvenation of the entire hotel. We've got an excess of 300 rooms in the resort, 9 food and beverage outlets, and so forth. So we started our renovations early last year worth $45 million. And the silver lining of that pandemic is that we were expecting to finish our full hotel refurbishment in Q2 next year. And having the hotel closed currently, we've been able to increase our level of resources within the construction aspect of the project. And delighted to hear that we will have the hotel fully refurbished by November this year. So hopefully we're in line with a travel bubble starting. We will be essentially the newest addition to the inventory of Fiji in terms of being fully renovated with some unique offerings. We'll be the first resort in Fiji having a dedicated adults-only beach club, a dedicated kids beach club, so one on opposite sides of the resort. As I said, 9 outlets, but within those 9 outlets, we've opened a great product actually just before Christmas, which is called Republic, which is the #1 nightclub currently in Nandi, and that has enjoyed amazing patronage since we opened in December, and unfortunately currently shut. But we are working hard on having some aspects of our resort reopening to a local clientele towards the mid of September next month as well.
I can hear the disappointment in your voice with the closing of the nightclub, because I can imagine your moves are very similar to mine, and never to be shown to the public. But my learning video or educational video was Saturday Night Fever. What was yours?
Well, let's put it this way: I've got 2 left feet. Okay.
But you're in paradise. You're in this magnificent property. I mean, except for no one visiting you, you're living the dream, aren't you?
Well, at this point in time, Mike, if we were to track back same point in time last year, we would have been into a peak season within Fiji. We would have had an excess of 1,100 guests staying in the resort using our various food and beverage outlets, multiple pools, spa facilities, and water sports facilities, and so forth. So for an hotelier like me, personally, I can tell you that I had to dig deep for the last few months. We are officially in our 5th month of full closure. And And yes, it is daunting. We had up till March, sorry, 550 employees in the resort. Currently, we've got an excess of 40 staff only working at the hotel, maintaining the grounds and the assets. So the frame of mind has drastically changed, I must say.
Just terrible. How do you think, though, the industry will be once hopefully we can put COVID-19 to bed? Will it be strong? Will there be a bit of a curve? What's your vision?
Well, it's interesting to say that, Mike, because at the end of the day, everyone's talking about the financial impact of the pandemic. Let's not forget it. It is a disaster in terms of financial impact. As I said, 18% of Fiji, of the Fiji population is indirectly or directly works within the industry. But we also need to see it somehow differently, that every calamity brings opportunities as well. And that's where I would like to focus my team's energy at this point in time, on the opportunity of creating further elements of aspirational tourism, to be more sustainable in our approach to tourism, and also, especially for Fiji, to have more community involvement within a business like ours in the future. And I think these are the opportunities that we should be thinking of. Yes, the financial impact is big, but we've got an opportunity to review our industry in the future and to make it even more exciting, not only for our guests coming, but for our ambassadors, our staff within the hotel, and also our local community. So how are we going to actually shape it in the future? And that is the exciting aspect of it.
When you open and somebody from, say, Europe or US, China, Australia, New Zealand, were going to pop over to Fiji for a bit of a swim, tan, spa, get rid of that stress, what would you suggest they do to eat? What would be your favourite dish and a libation to follow? Let's tease people, Vincent.
I would like to think that if one comes back to Fiji and when the borders reopen, is to put your frame of mind of living like an islander, and really embracing the culture, because the Fijian culture is something which is just amazing. Let's not forget that we were voted the happiest people in the world last year in Fiji. And picture yourself sitting by the shores of one of the resorts on the island. Might it be a small boutique one or a major branded one, and enjoying what Fiji does best, which is a kokonda, which is like a fish ceviche. And really immerse yourself into that culture. I think that could be quite aspirational for one coming from the US or Australia or New Zealand in the near future to actually aspire to experience.
And we certainly miss the carver and the clapping with it. I mean, it's amazing though, that after a few sips of carver and followed by the clap, it's amazing how many times you miss your hand when you're trying to clap.
It is quite amazing. It makes you quite numb, actually. And personally, for me, when I drink the cava, it makes me very sleepy. So it has different effects on different people, but very much what we call it, the grog of choice of Fiji.
I love it. That's an all-class act there too, Vincent. The grog of choice. It's all I can say is thank you very much, or in your native tongue, or revoir, or what? How do they say goodbye in Fiji?
Goodbye in Fiji would be, I would say, more.
More?
More.
More. I think I'll stick with Bulla and Bulla Vanaka.
Mark, thank you very much for your time.